2023 was a year when India's defence industry received record orders from the government. The Defence Acquisition Council approved proposals worth rupees 3.5 lakh crore, and recently acceptance of necessity was granted to proposals worth 2.23 lakh crores. Out of this, 98% will be sourced from domestic industries. In FY23, India's defence production crossed 1 lakh crore for the first time. Exports crossed a record 16,000 crore. Is the government now likely to increase the order book for Indian defence PSUs and the private sector? Will the capital budget in the total defence budget increase? And will there be a hike in R&D expenditures as well? Joining us now to talk about the Indian government's mega defence push is Giridhar Aramane, India's Defence Secretary. Mr. Aramane, thank you very much for joining us. The world had been reeling under the Ukraine-Russia war. How does the war in the Middle East add to our security needs at a time when our border dispute with China continues? How does the current geopolitical setup impact us?
Good afternoon, Parikshit, and Happy New Year to you all. I hope the new year will herald an era of peace. As our Prime Minister has stated repeatedly that this is not an era of war, and we have to take care of the instability which is happening in various parts of the world. While our intention is to ensure the peaceful coexistence of different players, we have to be ready with our own solutions for the geopolitical instability and vulnerabilities which emerge from time to time in our own national security systems. We have been monitoring the developments in Europe, in the Middle East, and in the South China Sea very carefully. And we keep on assessing the vulnerabilities we have to cater to in case the situation worsens further. Diplomatically, we have been working very closely with all our friendly foreign countries to ensure that India's supply chain remains open, and also we keep on helping our friends in need. The Russia-Ukraine war as well as Israel-Hamas conflict has led to global insufficiencies coming out to the fore. In fact, these are the countries which supply to almost all the countries in the world, either in terms of the electronic systems, the other fighter platforms like tanks, aircraft, engines, etc. The Make in India program of our Honorable Prime Minister has come handy in such a situation. We have been preparing for this kind of a situation for last 10 years. And now I am happy to tell you that whatever are the shortfalls from our supplier nations, we are able to mitigate to a large extent with our indigenous capacity. And I foresee that this particular episode, this particular event in Europe and also the one in the Middle East will help us to find opportunity for the domestic industry to strengthen our national security.
Right.
I am very confident that India will emerge stronger through this particular period of geopolitical instability by having a higher spectrum of manufacturing within the country.
Right. That's a very important point, sir, you're making, that we have been able to mitigate the shortfall in defense supplies from abroad, largely from our domestic industries. Going focus, will there be a greater emphasis on self-reliance? Will the localization drive be stronger, more aggressive?
Globalization is a must. We cannot really isolate India from the friendly foreign countries and the large players in the global arena. In fact, many of the technologies require inputs from various countries which are friendly to us. So we are not thinking of an autarkic solution for our defense and security needs, but it will be a codependent or a mutually supportive kind of a self-reliance in the defense sector. We have been working on several technologies with our friendly countries, from fighter jet technology to the semiconductors and our land-based platforms and sea vector. We have been doing a great job with our friendly countries in terms of collaboration. But ultimately, India is a huge country with a very large youth population. So our need to indigenize, our need to produce in India does not stem from strategic autonomy alone. It basically stems from our ability to provide the employment, gainful employment to more than 30 to 35 crore of youth who are in the active job market and several older people also.
There are already 5 indigenization lists that have come out, sir. In terms of future phase of emphasis on localization, what weapon platforms, ammunition systems would you want the industry to focus on in terms of localization and cutting down imports?
One is the modernization of our equipment, which is already in our inventory, whether it's the battle tanks or the ships, the naval ships, which need to modernize very quickly. We have very active borders, we have very active coastal area. So it is essential that our existing platforms remain in ship shape continuously. For this purpose, we have to provide constant supply of spares and constant maintenance in terms of the power packs, in terms of the transmissions, navigation, etc. So this will be the first level of focus which has been attempted in the positive indigenization list and also the negative import list. So we have reached a certain stage where we can be confident that the existing platforms will not suffer due to the supply chain disruption. Apart from this, we also have to concentrate on emerging technologies. As we have observed in Ukraine as well as in Israel-Hamas conflict, the huge platforms like warships, submarines, or fighter jets can be neutralized by very small platforms. In fact, the attacks in the Indian Ocean region or Arabian Sea by small drones, which cost $500, which inflict considerable damage on large platforms, is a lesson various armies are learning from these conflicts. Hence, we should be able to defend our borders and our economic zone with the help of the cheapest possible solution. We need not basically concentrate on large platforms where the others have an advantage. We should be able to procure drones, unmanned aerial vessels, and other similar equipment to protect our national interests. Further, the robotics have brought forward a great opportunity to ensure that there is very little loss of life in hazards, disaster relief, as well as counterinsurgency operations. In that particular field, there is a huge scope for investment by the private industry. For example, if we had foliage penetrating radars or robots which can do surveillance of the location of the terrorists, we could have prevented the loss of life to our brave soldiers in Jammu and Kashmir. And such platforms will be of great use in Naxal-affected areas also. So Indian industry need to ramp up their capacity to deliver such platforms. Apart from this, we got demonstrated ability to manufacture several platforms in air defense as well as in the ground mobility. Right. We continue to build upon this. We continue to work with our industry to ensure that India's security needs are fulfilled by our own companies.
Right. So I'd like to ask you about the defense production targets. In FY23, India's defence production crossed 1 lakh crore for the first time. What do you see the number as in FY24 and going forward?
Yeah, we are aiming very high. We have crossed 1 lakh, but we are not satisfied with it. We are still the largest weapons importer in the world until last year. So we should be able to obviate the imports by increasing our own capacity. I am fervently hoping that our production this year will cross 1.5 lakh crore and may even inch up higher if exports offer a better opportunity this year. Largely, 1,75,000 crores will be a very ambitious target, but I don't think Indian industry will fail me on this ambition.
Right. That indeed was the target that had been set by the Prime Minister, achieving a target of 1.75 lakh crore in defence production and $5 billion in defence exports by FY25. Do you think that can be achieved, sir?
The domestic production has got a great scope of being fulfilled because we still, as I said earlier, are the largest importer. If we carefully analyze all our imports and try to procure as much as possible from our own industry, it's quite a possible target. Coming to the export, it is well understood that our exports depend on our heft in the International Committee of Nations and also the technology edge we have apart from the manufacturing excellence of the Indian industry. So we are trying to achieve all these three. Diplomatically, geopolitically, India has acquired a lot of importance by being true to our national objectives and also supporting the friendly foreign countries in times of need. Then technology-wise, not only by domestic research, but by technology transfer and innovation, we have reached a status where many other countries also look for cutting-edge research in India and tying up with Indian startups and Indian MSMEs to procure from our sources. So in a way, it is a very sweet spot for Indian defense industry, where we have not only the government-to-government exports booming, but also the private companies being able to export on their own to large multinational defense companies to be part of their vendor chain.
Right.
This particular development is very heartening as large defense companies from US, Europe, and other countries keep on procuring from our companies, especially the startups and some of the public sector units.
Right. So could you give us a sense of the uptick that you expect in terms of total exports in FY24? FY23 was a record 16,000 crore. What could be the possible increase? How much of this will come from PSUs? How much of this will come from the private sector?
I am hoping that we will achieve our set target of 20,000 crores this year if everything goes well. As you understand, we don't supply to conflict zones any kinetic equipment. We also have several policy restrictions on whom to send and whom not to send. So all things going well, we can supply to many of our friendly foreign countries for their self-defense, not for any aggressive purposes. So 20,000 seems to be a reasonable target by now. The private companies are picking up in a major way. They are supplying to major multinational companies such as Boeing and Lockheed Martin, etc. I hope that they will be able to contribute at least 40% of this year's exports.
Right. On that note, we take a short break, but don't go anywhere. This conversation with Giridhar Aramane, the Defence Secretary of India, continues on the other side. We will be asking him about more schemes and what are the future production plans for the Indian Defence Ministry. Welcome back. You're watching CNBC TV18. With us right now is India's Defence Secretary, Mr. Giridhar Aramane, and we're talking to him about indigenization and India's defence production roadmap. So we have been seeing a very strong stock market performance by defence companies, defence PSUs like Cochin Shipyard, Mazgaon Dock Limited, BEL for that matter. What do you think will drive the growth of these defence PSUs in future? What is your vision for them in terms of the next 10 years maybe?
The orders from government will continue to flow as per the long-term capacity development plan of Indian Army, Indian Air Force and Indian Navy, apart from Coast Guard and the Central Armed Police Forces. So there will be a constant flow of the orders, procurement orders from Government of India agencies. Apart from that, as I have explained earlier, the battle scene analysis of the recent conflicts shows that there is a need to equip our defense forces with different kinds of technologies. Air defense, the drones and related platforms, and basically unmanned platforms or twinned platforms, which will be of great utility in ensuring security of the nation. So we have to make effort to look at these new technologies and make our industry, defense industry, to work on these technologies. Basics of most of these technologies are already available with both our domestic defense sector companies and commercial companies, non-defense companies also. For example, drones, electronics, etc. In fact, the IT systems are already in great of use, functional utility in the private sector. So we need to achieve that synergy between civilian and defense sectors to make Indian armed forces capable of tackling any of the dangers we face.
Right.
So my understanding is that the flow of orders can be in the latest technological fields, which can be exploited in a major way by the companies which are outside the defense sector.
So you're saying that this is a big window of opportunity and there will be a greater flow of orders in emerging technologies such as air defense, UAVs. Is that right, sir?
Yeah, air defense is a very old field, but in air defense, what can be the new technologies which can be deployed? That needs to be worked on. And electronic warfare systems and unmanned aerial as well as the surface vessels also need to be looked at with much greater interest by the industry.
Right. Does this mean, sir, considering that our defense procurement has been steadily going up and there's a great emphasis on local production, will the defense budget go up this year, especially the capital budget within the defense budget?
Defense procurement takes a lot of time. So most of the time, the money I will be spending this year will be the consequence of the orders I have placed in past few years. We are trying to expedite the timelines, but the amount I will be able to spend this year will be largely known by the contracts I have signed until last year. So that way, Finance Ministry has been very, very supportive of the Indian Defence Forces. They have been giving whatever we have been asking. And they also have indicated to us that if necessary, we will give more money in the revised estimate or supplementary estimate. So I don't foresee any financing or funding problem for the Ministry of Defence. I only have the constraint of the pace of manufacturing and the pace of the finalization of the contracts. That alone seems to be the constraint on spending more money and not the provision in the budget. However, I foresee an increase of 5 to 7.5% minimum increase based on my requirement in the defense budget. It can be higher or it can be much higher than that also if we need that money.
So 5 to 7.5%. When you say defense budget, sir, does it especially mean for capital budget, for capital acquisition?
Yeah, that's what I meant. Thank
Okay, sir. And what about the R&D budget? This has been an ask of the industry to increase the R&D budget. Is that a proposal going from you to increase the budget for DRDO and maybe R&D for the private sector as well?
R&D budget is also based on the programmatic framework which DRDO has developed, apart from the grants under IDEX and IDEX Prime. So in terms of budget allocations for the ministry, it will not vary too much. It cannot go down, obviously, but it cannot also increase by, say, to 20%, 30%, because of the pace of work in defense research is in a stepwise process. It's not one go I will be able to spend, say, 100 crores or 200 crores. So to that extent, they will get, DRDO will get whatever they have asked for. There will not be any shortfall in the provision by Finance Ministry to DRDO. However, I don't foresee a huge uptick in the budget, as we have been working on most of our schemes and programs over past few years, and they will continue to be funded. And any new program which is taken up will get the required amount of funds. As you understand, we have a target of 25% of the total research budget being allocated to the private industry also. Under that, we already are doing a lot of work in IDEX, IDEX Prime, TDF, and we plan to come out with a new scheme where certain emerging technologies also can be worked on by the private industry with a higher amount of grant. The scheme is under works. So gradually we are inching towards the 25% budget to the private industry, and we hope to achieve in next 2-3 years.
So what will be the timeline for the launch of this scheme for emerging technology? Will this be aimed at private sector alone, or defense PSUs can also participate, or there will be JVs? What could be the possible outlay? Any contours that you could share?
This is being aimed at the private industry. It will be specific to the emerging technologies, which require higher grant because of the infrastructure cost and also the cost involved in the innovation and development.
Right. So I'd also like to speak about the divestment targets of the government when it comes to defense PSUs like BEML, Garden Reach Shipbuilders, MDNL for that matter. What is the status of BEML, for example? The government in 2016 had decided to divest a 26% stake. Where have things reached so far? By when do you think the process could be completed?
We don't want to shortchange our family silver for immediate gains. We are in discussion with the Department of Public Asset Management, and we will arrive at an opportune moment for undertaking this particular task.
Right. But could you give us maybe a timeline, sir? Within how many months?
That I may not be able to commit on my own without discussion with the Finance Ministry.
Okay. Sir, in terms of the Garden Reach Shipbuilders and MDNL for divestment, what is the plan? Any other PSUs that you have identified for divestment?
This will be a considered decision in the board of the particular company and also in consultation with the Government of India. One other thought which is coming up is there is a need for building up a huge infrastructure in the country, either in the shipbuilding or related fields. So the public sector companies are working with several private companies, both Indian and foreign, for formation of JVs, joint ventures. So there can be some capital requirement for that purpose also. We will work out the total requirement of these companies, then look at what can be done.
Okay, so you're saying that when it comes to our shipbuilding PSUs, there could be a proposal for divestment in future, depending on their capital needs.
Yes, that's correct.
Mr. Aramane, thank you very much for joining us with that comprehensive view on where we're heading in terms of our defense production. What is the real push that you expect from the defense industry for the future on emerging technologies, and what role will defense PSUs and the private sector play over the next 10 years? Thank you very much for joining us for that comprehensive conversation.
Thank you.
That's all we have time for on this special broadcast. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.